Revitalization Project, and we're Ray and Nancy. Okay, and if you'll join us at the table. Okay.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
You provided in your packets a memo from Home for America updating us on the current status of their looking at the funding opportunities for the Bricks Revitalization Project. This afternoon, Nancy Rates and Kathy Ebner has joined us to give you more detail on where they are in the process.
Okay. Well, after actually waiting for months for the state to mull over the issue of whether they would provide partnership funds for the full cost, they came back to us and said no, they wouldn't do that. They would stick to their limits and that they would only be willing to provide partnership funding, which is the local government pot of funds at the limit of $85,000 a unit, and that they would be willing to consider their own loan programs for the balance of the cost of developing the project. So I guess we're a little bit in a dilemma at this stage. When we had met before, we were very firm that the city was not interested in pursuing the financing from the state, the loan financing, even though it was a loan that was contingent upon net income and surplus cash from the project to repay it. There was the obligation at the end of the 40-year term that was giving you pause, and so we've run through that process, and I suppose at this point the alternatives are that the project is dropped in its entirety as a rental housing development, or it's developed by and owned by someone other than the city who would be willing to accept loan funds from the state to finance the development. And I see those as the two options that are available at this point.
Okay, Council?
Well, we're looking at a not quite $750,000 loan with 2 to 4% interest.
Yeah, I think probably the state would be convinced on a property of this size to do the 2% interest.
That's a lot of debt to take on for a building that's valued right now at about $170,000, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been 221, but for some reason 170 something, 600.
The appraised value is 227.
227
for the as-is
that's
appraisal, which frankly is probably pretty much just valuing the land, because the building in its as-is condition is worthless. You can't, it's not occupiable, it can't be.
Not as is.
used.
Inside that building.
You have to watch where you step.
Yes, you literally, yes.
Yes.
I can say that I am not interested in taking on debt for that building. I really think a couple of the really hallmark comments in here, I think, was number one, that the funding that the state is willing to do is $85,000 per unit, which is comparable to what I think Habitat is like $70,000 to $85,000 per unit. So I think that's for affordable housing. That's
Right. I think those numbers are coincidentally the same, but the basis for getting there isn't even close to the same, to be fair. And the $85,000 for the price that Habitat sells their homes for is based on sort of their philosophy of what a median price is and not the cost of the home. Habitat builds the homes with volunteer labor and volunteer materials, so it's not a cost issue. On the state side, this $85,000 per unit limit has been in place probably since the mid-'80s when the program was created. And it was intended, the program is intended to be a program to leverage other resources, either the state's own resources or local resources, and because it has a limited annual appropriation from the General Assembly, usually around 7 million. They set the limit to make sure there was ability to disperse the money throughout the state rather than have it all gobbled up by one jurisdiction. So I think that the philosophy, while the number's the same, they're not quite comparable as to how they're derived.
And I appreciate that, and I'm aware that these programs often are about leveraging. I think what I'm talking about, though, is from the standpoint of value investment. Now, having walked through that building, I can see where it would be extremely expensive for new residential apartments in it. Whereas if it were to go for commercial, the cost of redevelopment would not be as high because there would be a different set of standards that commercial would have to go by versus residential. You know, you're not talking the same number of kitchens and bathrooms and so on and so forth. So that was one thing that I noted in there. You say in here that you don't feel it's a viable option for you to be that other entity to own the property. And I think that speaks to also that this is not necessarily the right project for that particular building. I would like to see the building rehabilitated, you know, and become a productive member of the neighborhood again. It's a neat building, it really is. But I think it would be in a better position for a commercial entity or a mixed-use entity than it would be for the purpose that we're stating. And one of my concerns is, you know, here we are at a juncture where we're looking out ahead and we have employees who are furloughed. We have additional police officers we're going to have to be paying for in a couple of years. And to take on that kind of debt for one building for a purpose that many feel, you know, regardless of what people's ideologies are on whether we should be in the landlord business, you know, I just think from a value standpoint that I don't think that this is a good way to proceed, and I wouldn't want to take on that kind of debt with interest.